This is the first of a series of videos that are going to support you through the development of the application for the assignment in your qualification 031. Now this is a synoptic assignment. That means it covers a lot of the knowledge and understanding that you've got throughout the course, but it's focused around the building of an application. So these videos that I'm going to create are going to help you to create the application by using what I call a mimic scenario. So in the assignment, you're given a scenario, which is called the assignment brief. And what this says is that you're going to be developing an application that allows the recording of side effects for drugs to be put into an application. And you must be able to demonstrate that you can have 3 separate observation records, or the side effect records. I'm calling these observations of side effects. And there's a data specification here, which is confusing. And I've managed to parse it and give a description in the videos that are coming along. So the first thing you ought to do is to read this assignment brief carefully. And it's linked to in the website links. And then once you've done that, you start to look at the tasks. Now you've got to create the document for the Board of Trustees. But I would imagine that this will be an ongoing document that will be going throughout the whole of the development process. And then we've got a design specification document. And then we've got to develop the application. Then we've got to make a network. And then we've got to test the application across the network. These videos are going to focus on task 2 and task 3. These are the only ones that are going to be of scope in the first videos essentially. Though I suppose at the end we will do a review application and so forth, and we'll talk about that. But we're going to focus on task 2 and task 3. So what I've done as a mimic application is I've designed around product observations, performance of domestic products. And those domestic products are divided into classes. So you'll have classes of products, and then there will be names of products for each. There will be size of packets of packages for each, and then there will be observations of how well they've performed, date of first use, and have they been in continuous use. So I'm going to be making you build an application where when you get to the synoptic assignment, all you'll have to do is change names, and you'll be able to use the work that you've done in your development application process to just create the finished product for this. So that's how I'm mirroring the situation. So the first thing we always do with the application development process is design. Now, design takes several aspects, and there is a whole checklist that I've got for you that will help you describe the design choices you've made, and it's a checklist. So if you get all of these things into your design specification, it will be a highly effective design specification document. So the first thing that we start with, the first thing I start with is the understanding of the client scenario. And then having understood the client scenario, I always make sketches of how my forms will look when I'm doing this data processing that we need to do. The way in which we're going to work this application in terms of development styles is we are going to be using object-oriented programming. We're going to be using Visual Studio from Microsoft, and you will be developing the application in a process called WinForms, Windows Forms. The Windows Forms will run under the .NET application framework, and it will mirror what you might do as a prototype application in a development process in industry. So this is a really worthwhile and realistic thing that you will do. So as I say, the first thing I always do is start with the sketches, and I'm going to show you some sketches which are really rough, and then show you how they will lead to the forms that you will create. So our application will consist of 3 forms, several classes that will be used to manipulate the data that's shown in these forms. And I've sketched out, and I really do this every time I'm going to build an application. I make sketches. And here's what a sketch looks like. Now, the assignment insists that the best marks go to the assignments where the design documents are annotated. And I've used a variety of colours here, but you don't have to use colours. I've just helped us, I hope, with how this is going to look in your final sketches. I promise you, this is how I really do design an application. I start with pencil. As you can see, I've left some pencil there. I didn't delete very well. I didn't rub them out very well. And then I put the controls in. I indicate where I'm going to put labels, what sort of controls are in use. I might name the controls in my sketch. Yeah, btn clear, btn add, txt, forename, etc. And so I'm starting to really specify what the application will look like and start to specify the names of controls. So this is the opening form, and what will happen in this form is that you will be allowed to add new persons to a database. Now, we don't know anything about databases, so what we're going to do is we're going to use a text file as a database. And that's a highly effective way of mimicking how an industrial application might work, where the data is not held in the application itself, but held externally. And the application looks it up and updates it. And we do things with data called CRUD. Those are create, read, update, and delete. So those are the 4 operations. It's the only 4 operations you will ever do with data in any applications, CRUD. So it's important that you understand that. So that's what our CRUD is going to do. And we will create, we will read, we won't do any update, and we won't do any delete. We will create and read. So that's the first form where we're allowed to add persons, and those are the fields that are required for a person. And once you've pressed that add button, they'll be written into the text file and shown here in the list. Now, what will happen in another situation will be that if you already have the person you want to use, you could just have this list and just click observations, and that will take you to the next page, which is form observations. And this is the form observations, and this is where it's a little bit complicated to describe, but I'll have a go. We've got an exit button on both of the pages, actually. That exit will actually just close the whole application down. There's a header, which just describes what the form is about. So having added a person in the database here, you can then select the person using what's called a combo box. And the CBO is the naming convention for combo box. Then you'll select a type of product. Then you select a product and a size. Now, the specification brief says that you have got to say that if there is a size other, there'll be another box that will appear where you can type in the other size. So this is default hidden, as you see, until somebody selects other in the list. Then there's a date picker control here, which will say what was the date of first use and has use been continuous since then. Then you're allowed to make 3 observations of how this product has performed, and you also have to say that there's an other in each of these boxes, and if you select other, then this becomes visible. These 3 boxes here become visible, and you type in another observation as an example. There are 2 buttons, one button clear, which will clear the controls, and add will put this, that's actually list person, that's not list person, that's list observations. LB observations. So that will then add the observation to this list. And then I've got names for all of the controls, and then naming conventions are described here. This is just the typical thing that I go through when I'm designing stuff. I promise you this is how I do it. And then this button here, once you've added 3 observations, this button here will take you to form summary. And this is a very simple form: header, exit to close the whole application, and then a list, and that will list everything that's in the text file database, which is called observations.txt. So when you add, it will go into here, and it will also be added to the database. That just adds current in this session, and then the show all will show all of them in the database. So this is what it looks like in Visual Studio. You can see Visual Studio has lots of components. On the left, we've got the toolbox. These are the things we can drag onto our forms. We've got the form design palette itself. Please just ignore that for the minute. And we've got on here the various controls that were shown on the sketches. So if you remember my sketch for form persons, there was the text boxes, there's the list box, there's buttons here. And this is how it appears when it is actually programmed into Visual Studio. Now, on the right-hand side of here, you've got what's called the Solution Explorer. And this is all of the objects which exist inside the project, which is inside what's called a solution. A solution can have more than one project, but in our case, we will only have one project. In an industrial situation, you might have the product, might be the GUI, then you might have a data layer, and then you might have a logic layer sitting on here, and they would just refer to each other. Now, underneath the Solution Explorer, and this is my layout, you may have a different layout in your controls that you've got them in the different places in your Visual Studio, and I really don't mind where you put them, but this is how I do it. And these are the properties that apply to the things that we've made. So here's our properties here. So that's obviously not right. So persons, and that now shows up as the header for the form. So this is the menu strip here, and I've got only one menu strip, and that just controls the closing down of the whole application. Then we've got text boxes where we will enter all of the information we need about a person, and we clear that, and it will just clear those text boxes. And add will take the data that's in these forms and put it into the list box first, and also store it in the text file database called persons.txt. When we've done all the persons we need to add, or if we've already got the one in that we want to work with, we open up, using this button, Form Observations. Now here's that thing I was telling you about before with these various controls that we've got. So that's not right there. So that, yes, list box observations is correct. That was wrong in the sketch, wasn't it? So here's what's called a combo box that allows us to select a person, select a product type, select a product and its size. And if we select other in this combo box, this, which is hidden at the moment, visible equals false, will be shown so that you're allowed to type in a different size into there. Then there's what's called a date picker, and then a checkbox to say use continuously. And once again, these are hidden unless somebody selects other in one of these combo boxes. Clear will clear the controls. Once we've got the data we want, we add, and it puts it into the observations list here. And these are just the ones we're working with in the current session. And then show all observations will take us to the last form in our application, which is form summary. And this is just a simple list that will have an abbreviated form of all of the observations that have been created in the form before and are now stored in the text file. So that's how we're going to do it in Visual Studio. And you see that the forms I've got here closely mirror what I sketched. My sketches were really rough, and observations was wrong, as you know, about the name of that. But that's okay, because we can record that in our design documentation. Now, what's also very important is that you have a test plan. So as you're creating these controls, what you should be able to do is design some tests that you would want to carry out when you're running the application that uses the controls. So this is just all going to become very obvious as we go through. And what I really want you to be making sure that you do is that you take an ordered approach to it. Do not worry about what you need to know in order to do this, because that's exactly what these videos are designed to do. They're designed to help you understand how these things are done. So in the next video, what we'll do is a very short one. We'll make the application, and you'll see that when I do this, I have two applications running. I have one called Prototype, I have one called Video, and I will have another one in the background that I use, which is the proof of concept. And then the fourth one I have is going to be the translation into the application for the assignment. So you get to build it twice. I get to build it 4 times. That doesn't seem fair somehow, but that's the way it is. So in the next video, we'll create our first application in WinForms. So just to finish this one off, let's just see this running. It doesn't do anything with data just yet in this version of it. And that's a running Visual Studio application using C# in Visual C#. And you'll see I've got the person form as the opening object. That goes to the observations where we select and do then all the things we do that. So it just does that for us. And then we go to the observations summary form, which shows all of them. Now in all of them, there's an exit button, and that just completely shuts down the application. So that's it running, and that's what we'll build on.